With the 3rd anniversary having released, it is now time to do another PvP tier list and to talk about all the recent characters that have come out and where they should be placed on this PvP tier list, as well as characters that have already been there and maybe moving up or down based on the way the meta has changed recently with the addition of the new characters. So we'll be starting with old units and then we'll move into the new units. So starting with our very first older unit, it is going to be Fantasy Jiro. Fantasy Jiro currently sits in the S spot as a sub meta. There have been quite a few arguments from multiple players that Fantasy Jiro is still very much insanely good on turn 1 because of her nullification. It's just a little bit too OP, and I can kind of see that because if you have that status element nullification turn 1, it doesn't really matter if you have the speed advantage, and then you can just focus on disrupting enemy skill chains or whatnot. So she is actually still very, very good. So I decided I would give her the double S spot for now. That is tentative, you know, it could change. She could go back down just depending on feedback, but that was from some of the more upper ranked players kind of saying that they believe she was double S tier and very decent. So I tend to agree with that she can be very good given the right circumstance. So I will put her in double S tier for right now. The next character we're going to be moving, there's not a ton of old characters we're moving around. This is actually the last one we're going to be moving for old characters, and that is going to be the Destruction All Might. This one is actually more thanks to Tokaza, who has tried this All Might quite a bit and he is not very happy with him. And then, you know, some of the other people chimed in and they're like, yeah, actually Tokaza's right. So we're going to end up moving Destruction type All Might. We're going to move him down to C tier. He wanted him in F tier. I'm going to be a little bit more generous than that because this All Might is definitely better than yellow and red All Might, right? He just had a vendetta against the purple All Might, but that's all right. I understand it when you want a character to be good and they're just not. So we'll put him in C tier. I feel like that is fair for him. I don't think he's as bad as the yellow and red All Might. Like some people might argue he should be down in D tier with them, but he's not as bad as them, right? So he can stay in C tier as a fun to use character. I think you can use him in PvP if you're just trying to have fun. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on him, and that is my thoughts on the older units. And now we'll move into the newer units. So we'll talk about Ochako, we'll talk about Hawks, we'll talk about Star and Stripe, the new Climax Battle All Might, the Steampunk characters. So a lot to talk about here. So starting with the blue Ochako, this is the only character I do not have because I didn't really care about. I pulled for her, I did my 5 multis, but I didn't really care about pulling for her because I saw her kit and she was not great just even on paper, and then she proved me right by not being great in game. Okay, so blue Ochako, I think she does a little bit better on the PvE tier list. She has already been placed on that PvE tier list in the previous one, but I will be doing a new one here coming up. But she does a little bit better on that tier list. On this tier list though, I would put her in C tier as well. So the reason I'm putting her in C tier is because she's very similar to like Odro. She's like a blue type support and she's better against strength type enemies. Otherwise she's not great. So I mean, if you're not great at like taking on multiple different types of opponents, you're going to be put lower on the tier list, right? But with that said, if it comes to like VE tower and you wanted to use a crit ABL support, she can give crit to ABL type characters and be fairly decent in VE tower, right? So she would be a little bit higher on a general like PvE investment tier list. Next, we have a Mind Hawks. Mind Hawks is in desperate need of a pro hero support, like so badly. We almost have the makings of like a beautiful pro hero team because this Hawks right here with Red Aizawa, so good, but we just lack the healing. We have no pro hero that can do any healing or anything like that, so we need that so badly. Additionally, he gives evasion to the pro heroes and speed to pro heroes, so he's specifically designed for pro heroes, and that kind of holds him back a little bit from being better. But if we ever get like a pro hero support, it won't matter because he'll be good on a pro hero team. And then he also can lengthen enemy cooldown times, which can be really, really goated. But once again, it's just so hard to like make this team work with the different factors you have to take into account when it comes to PvP, like status elements and speed and skill interruption and all that stuff. There's just a lot to take into account. So right now, without a good support to help like heal your team up, he just doesn't do super well. So with that said, I think he has potential. I think he can still be run okay with Red Aizawa, but I don't think he is the best of the best. I don't think he's sub-meta. I do think he is a competent character on his own though, and I think that's fair to put him into the competent category, right? Because he is competent. He just needs a little bit of help from a pro hero support. So yeah. Next we have Star and Stripe. This character, super hype. I was excited about the character. I actually got, I think, 3 copies in total. One from a daily, one from like one random multi I did. I got lucky. I can get her to 130. I don't have her to 130 yet. I have her to 110. But even with getting her to 110, I don't feel like she's the most cracked character. And I never thought she was going to be the most cracked character just from looking at her kit. She is another character very similar to like the Blue Ochako and Ojiro, who is good against a specific type of enemy. She is better against INT or green units, right? And so because of that, I feel like she can't go very high on the tier list. Also, she is kind of like a ripoff Festida. Festida has the evasion stuff and draws aggro all the time. She has evasion, but she can't draw aggro. So like, it doesn't do a lot of good to give herself evasion and then have the rest of your team just be able to be hit, right? So I don't know. She's not the greatest character in my opinion. I think you can use her, but I wouldn't probably use her most of the time. I think she is a, you know, not even a situational character, a fun to use character, I'm going to say actually. So I would put her in C. I would use her for fun, but I probably wouldn't use her all the time because she's just, I don't know. She's not all that in my opinion. She's not that great. I think she could be a little bit better. Just my opinion though. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Next, we have the Climax Battle All Might. So Climax Battle All Might, let's talk about this guy. So nobody really has him built yet, right? And just looking at his kit, the tranquility that he has can be very good because they can't land crits, and crits is a large part of damage when it comes to PvP. He could potentially be our best tank yet, but once again, just nobody has him built. So because of how good he is potentially looking, this one might come out of nowhere for PvP. You guys might not have expected this, but I am going to put him relatively high compared to other All Might. So while Destruction All Might goes down to C tier and he's a summonable unit, our free-to-play All Might is going to go up to A tier. I would put him in competent. As of right now, there is an argument to be made for him to go up to S tier for sub-meta, depending on how he ends up looking after people get him built. There is an argument for him to go down to B tier, situational. He might be a situational unit. It's hard to say. Right, we'll have to see once people get him a little bit more built, try him out in game. But for right now, I do think he is a solid tank. I think he will be really good for newer players if they're able to get him somehow. Granted, it is hard to get a Climax Battle character because it's endgame content, but there are lots of guides out there. Mine, Tokaza's, plenty of people who do guides. Pyro Sanity, one of the big people who does a lot of stuff for the My Hero Ultra Impact community, did it like without any Impact Fest units or anything like that, just general pools and SRs. So there's tons of videos out there. Check out the Discords, check out YouTube, you'll find them. And that'll help you out if you are a newer player trying to clear this Climax Battle. This one, initially, I think a lot of people thought it looked bad and scary. Now that I've done it a few times, I feel like it's not too terrible. I feel like you can actually get by and do this one without the new Steampunk Deku, and a lot of times it feels like it's paywalled behind the new character. So I mean, definitely the character helps. It makes it a lot easier, but I don't feel like it's completely paywalled behind him this time, as bad as it has been with some of the past Climax battles. And now we get into the last two characters, the characters you guys have probably been waiting for, and that is Steampunk Bakugo and Steampunk Deku. Okay, so Steampunk Bakugo, no real speed advantage for the team, unfortunately, and his bullseye isn't permanent like Celebration Bakugo. Those two things right there make me like Celebration Bakugo better, and that was last year's unit, which sucks. And then, but what he does have, okay, he gives allies cooldown time reduction when the enemy receives cooldown time reduction, and he lowers their skill impact by 30%, and he has an AoE, and he does have bullseye some of the time, and he has increased damage. Like, he can do some really good damage if you can get him through a couple of turns of the battle is the thing. That is the difficult part. And the other thing is his nitro is kind of weird. It's hard to stack it up to 10. I probably wouldn't recommend, based on testing, ever like trying to go for 10, because when you get his nitro to 10, you do get 70% crit rate, but that's not worth missing all of your plus ultras and all your damage to get to that, 10 nitro. So with that said, because he's kind of weird, because his kit, I don't know, I feel like it's difficult to use. Like, this is one of probably the most difficult characters to use that they've released for people to understand and make sense of. I'm going to put him into A tier. I do think he is competent. I'll put him up here with the other Bakugos, right? I'll put him at the front. I do think he is competent, but I don't think he's going to be sub-meta. I don't think he's going to be meta. I don't think he's going to be as good as those characters that are above him. That's just my opinion. And really quickly, in case you guys don't know, in case you're new to the tier list, I do not place these characters in order within the tiers of how good they are, right? So like, because Bakugo's here does not mean all those Bakugos are better than Deku's. I just tried to make it easy to find the characters for people. So I tried to keep all the Bakugos together, all the Dekus together, so on and so forth, just to make it as easy within the tiers to find people to see what tiers your characters might be in, okay? And then last but not least, we have Steampunk Deku. So this character genuinely surprised me when I did my testing for him in PvP. I did not expect him to do as well as he did. Now, what is he lacking? He's lacking speed, and he's lacking AoE attacks, okay? Even Fantasy Sue, who has Pierce all the time, just like this Deku, has an AoE attack. So it felt like a step backwards, kind of, in a way. But what he does have that makes him different is he has a great plus ultra advantage because of his PU effect up. So basically, whenever this guy uses a plus ultra, it uses less of the plus ultra gauge than a normal character, meaning he will be able to plus ultra again sooner. However, this kinda is not super great in PvP because it messes with your skill chains if you are taking a turn to plus ultra instead of using a skill chain. So it's better in like PvE, specifically the new All Might Climax battle, but it could have its uses in PvP potentially, okay? And I did mention that he has Piercing Shot, which is strong, but he also has some more good things about him. He has stacking defense and HP. And so if he doesn't hit his crits, that is, he'll get defense and HP. That's kind of the bad part. But a lot of times people aren't running crit memories necessarily in PvP. They are running a lot of times more speed memories, things like that. So it's not terrible, okay? It's not completely terrible. The stacking defense and HP can be good, and if you get him further into the battle without him dying, he can hit really hard and have pretty good survivability. However, I do feel like full 100% Deku still has much more value than him, because once you get to turn 5, full 100% Deku just can't die, and he does more damage than Steampunk Deku, or if not like the exact same. I think it's quite a bit more damage though than Steampunk Deku, and he can't die. Whereas this guy can still die, and he may hit the damage numbers, but it takes him a few turns to get there, right? So I don't know, he's just not super great. Single target attacks, no AoE, no speed, but he does have that stacking if he doesn't hit crits. Very situational to a degree, but I will put him in competent for right now because I feel like you can take him into PvP. I feel like you can use him in PvP and still win. Like, I won a couple of my matches when I did my showcase for him, right? And I thought he did fairly decent. So that's my opinion of the new characters. That is where I'm going to place them right now. This is how the tier list is looking in May of 2024. And let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Do you guys agree or disagree with any of these characters? I know there are arguments from some other players when I was talking to them in the Discord about other characters who should move up or down. So for right now, I'm not going to move them because I feel like this is fairly okay with where the characters are. I feel like they're fairly in the right place. I do want to actually put this Deku with the other Deku. So there we go. He's with them. But yeah, that's where we're at, guys. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.